Greetings, writers. My name is Caroline Bliss Larsen, and with me today I have Dr. Raun Melmed. We are authors, and we want to talk to you today about co-writing. We are co-authors of an illustrated chapter book series called the ST4 Mindfulness Books for Kids, also known as the Monster Diary series, as you can see here on the screen. Our newest book is the one in the middle there. It's called Trouble with Friends, but I Get By Big Time. And it's about a summer camp and an obnoxious lake monster. So it's a really fun read, and hope you guys check it out because it's just a blast. But today we wanted to talk to you, share some tips with you about how to write a book with a buddy. So if you've ever wanted to try that with a friend, then this video is for you. So before we dive in, Ron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, first of all, I speak with an accent. Sometimes people don't remember much what I'm saying, but they recognize the accent, so they think it's very important. But I'm from South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, and came to the United States many years ago, and to keep on studying. I'm a pediatrician, and I went on to specialize in developmental pediatrics. I'm a developmental pediatrician, and I see children and adults with a variety of developmental problems, anxiety, depression, ADHD. My specialty and pet interest is actually in the area of autism. So I see children and adults who present with autism and all these kinds of difficulties. I also do research in many of these areas. And more recently, I found myself getting involved in writing books, which is just a wonderful period, and I'm enjoying it so much.
Thanks, Ron. A little bit about me. I am Caroline Bliss Larsen. I'm an editor and an author. I joined Ron on this series with the second Marvin's Monster Diary book, ADHD Emotion Explosion. And we're working on our next book, which will be about bullying. So yeah, that's just a little bit about us, but we want to talk to you about co-writing. So first, just wanted to share a few examples of some popular books that have been written by more than one author. And these are really great books, so you can check those out. I want to talk about why you would want to co-write something and how you choose who you want to co-write with. And I think this would be a great question to throw to Ron.
You know, as a developmental pediatrician, I give advice to a lot of parents who have challenging children. And I often find myself saying the same kinds of things and giving the same types of recommendations very frequently. And the whole impetus behind the series was to figure out whether it would be a good idea or not to put some of these ideas actually into a literary form, into a book form, or to an audio form for that matter, so that we could reach far more people. Because the kinds of difficulties that we talk about are the kinds of challenges that normal, typical, everyday children have. Certainly those with special needs have them as well. But typical children all have concerns with anxiety. They all have concerns about popularity, about making friends, God forbid, being bullied, about their anger management. So that was what the initial impetus behind the series was. So the next issue was, well, how are we going to frame this in an interesting way to make sure that it would grab children and children would really want to read this? They don't want to just see a talking head go on and on and on, or words on a page. So it was important to try and wrap the book in something that was going to be far more palatable. And that was going to be the idea of having a co-author who could spend their time and their interest and their expertise and let their fantasy run riot about clothing the bare bones messages, the very core messages, most important, but in a way that children would actually find it delectable and delightful to read. Karen, I couldn't ask for anything better because you've just been absolutely wonderful about doing exactly that.
Oh, well, thank you. I was very flattered to receive the invitation and very surprised. So thank you. It's really been a blast to write this with you. And I wish this kind of working relationship for all of our viewers. If you decide to work with a buddy to write a book, I hope you have the same kind of like fantastic synergy that Ron and I have together. He brings his expertise in psychology and I bring mine in story writing, and we make a great team. I think we're both really good at working together and coming to a compromise that we both feel happy with. So that's been great, and that's
And there have been times when we've disagreed. There's
Yeah.
absolutely no question. Maybe I wanted to go one particular way or something like that, and you another. And it was just a matter of figuring out and stopping and thinking. And it's not, no, I don't like what you're saying. It's more like, yes, that's good. And in addition, we can have this and this and this. So taking what each other have to say and building upon it and not looking to score points. That would never work in a co-writing situation.
Definitely, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you for that advice for our writer friends who are watching. Um, so let's talk about, we've kind of touched on some of these things, so we won't linger too long on them, but I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of co-writing. And as you may have understood so far with Ron and me, it's really been a very positive experience. So a lot of these are just kind of general things that I've picked up from other authors who have maybe had more trouble with their co-authors. But then also, you know, we have our list of pros. I'm not going to read through all of them. If you want to check out this list, you can just pause the video and read through it. But yes, a couple things I just wanted to point out is that, as we said, we do disagree, but we are always able to come to a good compromise. And so that's a challenge I think any co-writers will have because you've got two different people, two different perspectives. They're automatically, you know, going to be a little bit different at times, and that's okay, and that's great. So, but some of my favorite things about co-writing has been having someone to bounce ideas off of, to support and encourage me, because writing is hard and it can be, you know, emotionally and mentally draining. And I think Ron and I are really good at supporting each other that way. And then we get to do events like this together, which is great for someone like me who has a little bit of a shyer, a little bit more of a reserved personality. And like, I get, you know, it's really nice to have someone else to share this wild ride with me who is just as invested in the book's success as I am. So these are really great things to think about if you're thinking about trying to write a book with a buddy. So let's talk about the how. This is a writing prompt that is kind of based on how Ron and I have written our books together. Basically, that idea of sharing your expertise with your partner and then your partner trying to write something based on your expertise. I'm not going to spend time reading this to you, but so you can pause the video and check it out. Also, this writing prompt and some other writing prompts are going to be included in a handout with this video. So feel free to download that, print it out, try it with your friend. There will be a few different exercises so you can see, you know, maybe how, what ways you want to split up the work when you're writing a book. So yes, the how. How the heck do you actually write a book together? What does that look like? There are a lot of ways you can do it, and you can, you know, these are just a few ideas, but you can come up with your own methods. And I'll let you pause the video and read through them if you want to, but I just wanted to point out a couple. So yeah, if one person kind of has a harder time coming up with ideas, maybe one person, you know, does the story ideas and then one person actually puts it to paper. That's a little bit similar to how Ron and I do it, but we also work together on the actual story as well. Each author can write from a different character's perspective. So if you have a book that is from two different characters' perspectives, then, you know, you automatically say, hey, I'll write this character, you write that character, and you have kind of distinct voices that way too, which is pretty cool. So I want to also tell you guys about how exactly Ron and I, you know, what our process looks like in co-writing. So, you know, these ideas here on the screen are some that you can use for yourself, but we'll tell you a little bit about how we approach it. So, Ron, you start the book writing process for us. Can you kind of tell us how the beginning of that process looks like?
Well, the first aspect is trying to prioritize what exactly is the point of the book. What are we actually really trying to get across? So once again, these are kind of in the realm of self-help style books, of self-advocacy books for children. So I try to think about the most important things which are facing children today. So right now, of course, with COVID, the issue of being at home and the issue of being stressed and the issue of not having any friends, that's a majorly important issue. And that will come to the fore because that's what I find myself speaking a lot to people. Screen time stress is a great example. And that's why we have one of the books on screen time stress. Parents are totally freaked out about the amount of hours that their children just seem to be glued to their screens and not being able to do almost anything else. Anger management. Anger comes out in all sorts of ways. Of course, bullying between siblings is an issue, and that becomes a problem as well. So the first aspect is, number one, is to come up with how are we going to address this big picture problem? And then I'm, fortunately with years of experience doing this as a developmental pediatrician, I'm generally, one of my areas of expertise is coming up with developmentally appropriate solutions, what I call developmental counseling, about how children and how their parents as well can help them actually move the whole situation forward. So I have those ideas and I'll put them down onto paper and then stand back and think, okay, we have the tasks, we have the mission in mind of what we're trying to achieve for the child and the family. We have some of the techniques in mind, and now the storyline. I can come up with often different kind of stories or games about it, but that's when Caroline comes in and starts to speak and think about, hey, how would she, from her own experience, look at these kinds of issues of bullying? Which of us don't remember that? Issues of anxiety or stress management, or feeling miserable, or feeling angry, or feeling left out, or feeling humiliated or embarrassed. Which of us didn't have those? And if you just dig deep back into your past, which I think sometimes Carolyn might do exactly that, then she presents with, ta-da! Go for it, Caroline.
Yeah, exactly. So then I start, after Ron gives me the topic and a little bit of guidance on what the book should be about. Sometimes he'll suggest a setting or maybe a new character. From there, I take it and run. So I start brainstorming, and for me, that looks like I sit down and I just make a list of anything that could happen in the book. They don't have to make sense together. They can be totally zany, wacky out there. But this is the brainstorming stage, and so there are no dumb ideas when you're just brainstorming. So once I have a pretty good list and I've drained my brain a little bit, I pull out my favorite ones, and I think about how they can fit in with the topic that Ron suggested, and how that could help teach the tools that our books teach. And then I kind of start organizing those, and I start developing those ideas a little bit deeper, and I arrange them into an outline. You may have made an outline in your English classes before, to help you organize your thoughts before you start writing a paper, right? So that's exactly what I do. So once I have an outline I feel pretty content with, I send it to Ron and get his feedback, and he always has great ideas. He's really great about adding humor and jokes to places I didn't even think of. And so we go back and forth until we feel pretty set on an outline that we're both happy with. And then once we have that, I start writing the rough draft. And I usually just write straight through a draft if I can. And then I go back and read it a couple times, and I make changes that I already know that I want to make the story stronger. And then when I feel like the draft is in a good place, then I send it over to Ron and he starts doing his editing. Do you want to talk about what it looks like for you at that point, Ron?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we obviously have different styles of speech and styles of humor. My whole idea is to keep things as crisp and as tight as possible, to really grab the child's attention, to make it a little edgy, to add in things that may be taking some risks sometimes even. I was a great reader of Mad Magazine. That gives my age away. And I remember the only thing I used to really focus on in Mad Magazine wasn't the comic strips themselves, but the little teeny weeny characters on the side who used to make sarcastic comments about what was actually going on. And that would be an example of things that I love to add into it. Also, as mentioned, love to make things as funny as possible. I just love it when I hear parents telling me that when they read their books, they start giggling and their kids start giggling while they're reading them together. That just makes my heart incredibly warm. So it's that type of storyline and elements to it. Also try and make sure that we're keeping true to the plot and making sure that we're focusing on that mission. Are we trying to help kids with stress management? Are we trying to help kids with social communication? Are we trying to help kids withstand bullying? What are we really trying to do? Let's keep it tight to that. It's often easy sometimes for fantasies to go out as far as writing the great American novel. And that's always important to, like, let's say, okay, that might be what we're trying to get at eventually, but we got to start with the end in mind. And the end is having a successful, happy child with a warm and strong, supportive family.
Absolutely. And what you said about writing this sprawling fantasy novel or something, I find myself having to rein in that. And that's where I'm really grateful for your role in the editing, is because I do tend to get a little bit verbose in my writing. And so Ron is great at suggesting ways to tighten up the language a little bit, take out parts that just aren't necessary. Because I always want to write long stories, but these are short little books, 100 or so pages. So just to conclude with our points, so to find a good writing partner, remember to look for someone who is respectful, who will be honest, but who will also be cooperative and leave their ego at the door, so to speak. And be that kind of friend yourself. That's really important too, is you can't expect things from your writing partner and then turn around and not do those things yourself. So basically just be a good friend. Check out our latest book for tips on how to be a good friend, right? Think about each other's strengths as a writer and as a storyteller. Think about your expertise. And then decide how you want to share the work, to split it up. And consider writing down what you decide on, whether you want to split up, one person writes the plot, one person writes the characters, however you want to do it. And then from there, just make sure that you're communicating often, but have fun and be creative. And just remember that there is no wrong way to write a book. There's no one right way to write a book. The best way to write a book is the way that works best for you and for your writing partner. So be sure to check out the handouts in the description. Leave us a comment or send us an email if you have any questions, or to tell us what you thought about the video. So happy writing, everyone.